So welcome back to 4.3 Part 2 Notes of Trigonometric Form. We're going to talk about finding the product and the quotient of two complex numbers. In other words, we're going to take one complex number, multiply it by another complex number, and get an answer. We'll do the same we'll do the same when it comes to dividing. Divide one complex number by another complex number. So if you have a complex number that is in trigonometric form, and another complex number that is in trigonometric form, and let's say we call that z1 and z2, here's the formula that you would use. Again, you just ignore the z1 and the z2 portion of it, and you use this formula. You take the two r values, multiply them together, take the two thetas and add those together, and then you take the cosine of whatever that angle would be. If it's division, if I ask you to divide these two trigonometric forms of complex numbers, you would divide the r values here and then do the cosine and the sine where you subtract the angles. It's really important that you understand that theta 1 would be in the numerator when we're dividing, theta 2 would be in the denominator when we are using the division portion of this formula. So let's take a look at an example. I'm given a trigonometric form of a number here and a trigonometric form of the number here, and I'm asked to multiply these two trigonometric forms by each other. So I'm going to use this multiplication one where I have to know what r1 is. r1 is 5/3. r2 would be 2/3. Theta 1, you'll notice in the first form, would be 140 degrees, and theta 2 would be in the second form, which would be 60 degrees. So when I actually compute this, I'm going to do r1 times r2 so r1 times r2 times the cosine of theta 1, which is 140 degrees, plus theta 2, and then we will add to that I times the sine of 140 degrees plus 60 degrees. So multiplying this out, this is going to give me 10/9. This would be the cosine of 200 degrees plus I sine of 200 degrees. So this would be my answer if I was asked to leave it in trigonometric form. So this is trigonometric form. Now, I may not always be asked to leave it in trig form. So if I'm asked to change it to standard form, in other words, standard form would be this, I would have to figure out what A is and what B is, and the way I can do that is I can just multiply this in. I can do 10/9 times the cosine of 200 and 10/9 times the sine of 200. So doing that, because 200 is not on my unit circle, I would use my calculator. So when I do 10/9 times the cosine of 200 degrees, I end up with negative 1.04. So now to get this form, again, I'm just using the distributive property, I get negative 1.04. To get the second portion of it, if I want to leave it in standard form, I would do 10/9 times the sine of 200 degrees. And I get negative 0.38. So minus 0.38, bring down the I. So this would be the standard form of it. Standard form. And this would be the trigonometric form. Again, just pay attention to what your problem is asking you. It didn't ask me here to leave my answer in a certain way. Typically, if it's in trigonometric form, we would leave our answer in trigonometric form. But I want to show you both so you know how to do it either way. So now we are dividing a complex number in trigonometric form by another complex number in trigonometric form. And you can't see any more of the formula, so I'll just write that formula down up here at the top of the paper. So you take r1 divided by r2, and you times that by the cosine of theta 1 minus theta 2. And you add to that I sine of theta 1 minus theta 2. Again, these should be brackets instead of parentheses. So that's the form. Again, what we're going to need to know is we need to know r1, r2, theta 1, and theta 2. So here is R1, it's 12. There is R2. Here is theta 1, 52. And here is theta 2, 110. So now just plugging it into this formula, we would get 12 divided by 3 times the cosine of 52 minus 110 plus I sine of 52 minus 110. So I know this is going to be 4. This is going to be the cosine of negative 58 degrees plus I sine of negative 58 degrees. Now one thing I want to remind you of is that your theta must always be between 0 and 360 degrees. In other words, one time around the unit circle. This is not one time around the unit circle, so find the coterminal angle with that. The coterminal angle would be when I add 360 degrees to that. So that would end up being 302 degrees. So if I'm going to leave my answer in trigonometric form, theta has to be between 0 and 360 degrees. So my answer in trigonometric form would be 4 times the cosine of 302 degrees plus I times the sine of 302 degrees. That would be trigonometric form. If I wanted to write the answer in standard form, I'll do that over here. Standard form. All I would have to do is use the distributive property and multiply that in. So make sure your calculator is in the right mode. 4 times the cosine of 302 is 2.12. And 4 times the sine of 302 is negative 3.39. So it would be plus negative 3.39i. So this would be standard form, this would be trig form. Again, typically we would leave it in trig form unless your answer or your question actually tells you which form they want. Again, please make sure that you go through in your final answer whenever it's in trigonometric form. Doesn't matter if it's just a dividing problem, but anytime you write it in trigonometric form, you have to have this number that is between 0 degrees and 360 degrees.